Welcome. This is the Simply King podcast. This is your boy Rodney Perry, King himself, and you just tuned into the Soulfully Conscious podcast for humans, simply being humans. And today, I have a very special guest here with me. Not only is he an educator, but he loves education so much that he is still in school. He got so many degrees that he can share them. You know what I'm saying? But nevertheless, I want to welcome all of you to a great guest of mine, someone that I've actually contributed to his podcast before that I think you all are going to love and get so much great information on. I have here with me educator, current doctoral candidate at NYU, as well as just all around advocate for better educational systems and policies. I have here with me Madison Payton. Let me get a little applause for you. How you feeling, bro?
I'm feeling great. I like that little applause. Thank you.
Like that? You like that? Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I was like, let me give him something. But you know what? I feel like I told you just before. You have one of the best names in the game. Just a great all-around name in general. I feel like it can get you a lot of places. It could be a lot of things. Madison Payton sounds like a clothing line. It just sounds like a famous actor. It sounds like a building, a street name. It sounds like a lot of things. Like Madison, like I'm off the corner of Madison and Payton. I'm wearing Madison Payton right now. I got that new Madison Payton on. It's a great name.
Thank you, Mom.
Yes. But before we get into who you are, I want to get into some, you know what I'm saying, some a little bit of, you know, do my Twitter check-in, and it's one that I'm so glad I'm talking to you about because it feels the most appropriate, because I haven't talked about this on the show, my love for this show. So let us tap into the Twitter check-in. Okay. It's my nice little sound effects. All right. So today's Twitter check-in is simply #Abbott Elementary. We all, regardless if we, the people who have not chosen to go to, you know, get a secondary schooling or education, going to college, we all can speak to being a part of some elementary school system. Even no matter what generation, a lot of us had some school, you know? So we can speak to how school is. If it's good, if it was bad, you remember some of your favorite teachers, some of your favorite things, the terrible food, all those different things. And in all honesty, I think Abbott Elementary has found a way to truly qualify and capture all these various characters and archetypes of a school in neighborhoods that's just like ones that so many of us grew up in. Tell me, Madison, are you watching Abbott Elementary?
I am watching and loving Abbott Elementary. It is a fantastic show.
What did you say? What would you say is because I know you probably seen. I don't know if you've seen it because I know when we spoke about it in our pre-interview, you didn't watch it just yet. Did you see the backlash about Abbott Elementary from like educators, like quote unquote real live educators of today?
Right. I mean, I'm a real life educator, and I think that, you know, it's a show. It's capturing feelings that some of us have, and it's not going to be for everyone. But I think that, like you said before earlier, everyone has attended elementary school minimally, at least in the United States. So we have a sense of some of those teachers. And if we are an educator, you know some educators that are like that. You know some principals that are like Ava. So it gets some backlash, but it's not supposed to be a perfect narrative. Is not monolithic.
Yeah.
But I think it does captures the inequities in education. I think it does capture the archetype characters that you see that's in schools. So I loved it. I mean, I binged it as soon as we spoke. I binged as much as I could, and then I started just watching as it drops every Tuesday. So,
yeah.
There's not one dropping today though, apparently. So
really. Yeah. I feel like that's a thing because I've been watching that. I always follow. I'm part of that Hulu Next Day crew of people, and I've been watching Abbott Elementary and Grand Crew, and they both come on Tuesdays, and I've been watching them the day after. And I noticed that with Grand Crew, they like took damn near it's like they waited the whole month of February to put out another episode. They like put out 2 episodes in February for some reason. Maybe Abbott, you know how these networks are. They could be having to space stuff out and take breaks. But lastly, what would you say is the most familiar to you? What part of the show feels the most familiar to you?
I like Janine.
In your experience,
yeah, I like Janine because she is like the new teacher that wants to just do everything. She knows that she just want to get in there. She wants to get her hands dirty. She wants to be there for the kids. She wants to be everything to everyone. And I think she's on the path to burning out. She doesn't know it yet because I think this is her second year in teaching and on the show. Yeah. So she's on the way to being burnt out if she continues this way of like trying to help everyone, is for everyone. She wants her colleagues to be her friends. She wants to save everyone. I don't want to say she wants to save every kid. I don't think she's a savior. She doesn't have a saviorism complex, but she wants to just help everyone, and she can't sleep without helping everyone. And you find very early in education that you just can't help everyone, and that's not a mean thing to say, but it is something that's the reality, that you can't help everyone. You can't be something for everyone. Yeah. Right. I think that's what we see with Janine, is that she really wants to like do it all. Mm-hmm. She even wants to like fix the lights in the school, and like she's not an electrician, but like here she is, like the kids need the lights. We can't see. So I think it's really interesting. And I think that Janine resonates a lot, especially first year teachers who might feel like they have an uphill battle and they really want to do justice by those kids.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I feel I agree. I've seen that same thing in Janine. The burnout thing is definitely like a industry specific thing. I wouldn't even have thought about that, but that's perfect. That's probably Lily coming up. That's probably like gonna definitely happen to her character, just because it's like this is just a natural progression. If you are leaning in like that, that makes a lot of sense. I like also just the how they're showing the differences in generations. You know, I think that's the part that feels like a common theme that I really enjoy, because for me, I trip off like how I now have colleagues and friends who are educators, and it's like I do not remember having an educator like a teacher your age. You know what I'm saying? Like you 30, you 20 something, and you're a teacher. I don't know. I think I can only think of a handful of teachers that I had that were really young. That was like actually young, and I could tell that they were young at whatever age I was at. Majority of my teachers was old as hell. I'm from the South, so they was probably educators for a very long time. And but I definitely can remember all of my younger teachers because they were younger, because it felt more. So when I hear particular passions that a lot of them, you know, friends and people that I know and people I graduated college with who became teachers, it makes sense why they're so passionate, because they are, you know, at this phase of, you know, of it's being so fresh and new, and them being so young and spry and ready to get after it, ready to change lives and impact children and shit like that. It's just beautiful to see the difference, because I never could know. I never would have known what's really going down in the teacher's lounge. You know what I'm saying? So seeing that really does, you know, feel kind of cool. You know what I'm saying? I just wanted some of that lemonade and that tea they didn't let us get in elementary school. I don't know why. But nevertheless, I always thought that was fucked up. I was like, why we can't get no lemonade? I get drinking at the house. Nevertheless.
So that means that Barbara resonated with you, the older Miss Howard.
Hell yeah.
It's like she told those kids real quick, she's like, we don't have much, but we do what we got. And she basically told those kids, shut up, basically. And they're like, and they're like just following her. Like, and she just knows what works. Like, she's like, you just got to talk to the kids. Like, don't ask no questions. Just tell them you want to sit down. She went into the room. She's like, sit down right now. And all the kids were like,
but that's real though. Like, I think about that just in terms of just communicating with adults. Like your tone and your like the presence that you kind of can come into a room with. You could be saying a command, but make it sound like a question. Like you could be like, and I think that children, especially, that's the thing that they're sensing more than anything. Like, how are you speaking to me? And You ain't serious. Like, I'ma still, and like, I'ma still do me. Like, you ain't that mad, or you ain't that for real. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think it's so interesting. But I love the show. I can't wait. I definitely am on that, on that hit, dying on that hill, that this deserves to be one of those shows that we get a million seasons of, if they want to give them to us, and us to look back and be like, man, y'all remember when we used to watch this live? Now we got all this all this to rewatch. I love that. I love the idea of that, and I just see it being so expansive because it's a school. Like, you can bring in it's so many people who are involved in the educational system. It's a lot of people just in general. Like, we can go to different things happen all year. We're talking about school plays and the cafeteria and the guidance counselor and the art teachers and it's so many elements to a school, and they change over time. Like, they dead ass change over time. And it's a great segue to, how, more about you and how we connected. Your podcast is about, not only about education, but the connection between education and race. And I think it's a beautiful thing that needs to be spoken about more often, for sure. And because it's, in all honesty, has always been kind of a thing. It's never not been a thing. Anytime you think about anything from a standpoint of oppression and subjugation of a people, is usually some educational element that's attached to that. Like, what are we going to deprive them of? And 9 times out of 10, that's education. They shouldn't be able to read. They shouldn't be able to learn. They shouldn't be able to have access into a particular knowledge so that we can continue to control them or continue to do whatever we're doing with them. And that's even in modern day terms. They don't even know about their election process, or they don't even know about these particular things. And that's how we can continue to control them. We're going to put in a different language. We're going to use a different currency. We're going to do so many different things. And so I think education is a true cornerstone in our overall just development. And it's so crazy that we all have various different experiences that really, really impact us for the rest of our lives. And one thing that I'd share with you that kind of opened my eyes to my own perspective was just telling you how I was at a school that pretty much was I want to say my school was at risk because we didn't meet all those factors. Because from an educational standpoint, we were behind the bar, and from a graduation rate kind of benchmark, we were definitely lower than what it needed to be from a state standard. But we were excelling in extracurriculars. My school was 4 years old by the time I got there, and we already won 2 state championships. We're ranked 13th in the nation in basketball. We went to semifinals in football, all these other sports. The future farmers of America were getting blue ribbons every year and all these various things. So it's like you're keeping kids involved, a lot of the kids involved, but we're only talking about a very small portion of the children at my school, and so many kids being left behind in the middle of, the end of the Bush administration going into the Obama administration. So it was a lot of different things happening. And so I was glad that you gave me the opportunity to even tell that story, because I never even thought that was a perspective worth sharing. But yeah, I had about 4 or 5 principals in the 4 years of school that I had. And a lot of those happened in the first 3 years of my high school career. And having actual educational and educational facilitators that were hired by the state to be in the school. And we seen them basically as just an extension of the rest of them, not knowing until until I got to junior year, Mrs. Such and Such Mrs. Penn ain't just a regular, guidance counselor, teacher, whatever. She's actually here working in representation of something else. And none of the teachers really like her. We learned that over time that, they really don't like her because she's basically just monitoring them and making them teach in a particular way. So I'm like, damn, who knew? Because we kind of liked her. We thought she was kind of cool. But I think that was also maybe her way of figuring things out between us. But nevertheless, I'm going to stop talking and pass over the mic. What was it that made you so connected to education in the first place? Because I feel like you got to have a passion to even tap into education.
Right. Well, the first thing that I want to say is that students, especially students of color, are not at risk. When they hear the phrasing "at risk," my question is, well, what are they at risk from? Are they at risk from being underfunded, under-resourced, all of these things, being deprived of an education, all of those things put onus back onto the system and not onto the students, because the system, as we already know, was not designed for students of color to be successful. It was not. Now, Black schools in the South are pioneers in terms of how they did education, and we learned a lot from them and how we create culturally responsive education in our schools, and really making sure that everyone is included in that. And we've seen that for decades, if not the entirety of education, Black education in the United States, and specifically in the South. So what you're experiencing is actually education that has been going on for a long, long time. So I think that something that we should, think about is that when we think about Brown v. Board, for example, that was supposed to integrate things, it actually did not help the situation, because we are far more segregated than we ever have been in the existence of the United States.
Exactly.
So it didn't actually help. And then what happened with Brown v. Board is that we had thousands of teachers, Black teachers, laid off, including principals, who lost their jobs because they were combining schools and making Black kids go to white schools. Because remember, it was always us that had to integrate the schools. It wasn't white kids integrating Black schools. It was the other way around. So if you lose your enrollment, what happens to that school? It closes down, you lose jobs. So some people like to applaud Brown v. Board as being kind of like, this is the greatest success story that America's had in terms of education. But in actuality, it really is not.
Yeah.
Because again, we are far more segregated than we've ever been. I live and work in New York City, and we are one of the most segregated cities in the country.
Yeah.
Even though we're one of the most diverse cities in the country.
Everybody
right
in their own spaces.
Lines, you got all the white kids going to school with all the Black kids going to school, the same schools. And we do know that in being inclusive is probably one of the best ways to do that. I'm not a segregationist, but I do know that we can't have a system that does not fund schools properly and under-resourced as well. I think that's what we have to think about as well. It's not just about the money, it's about the resources. Because even though you have top performing public schools in various places throughout the country, we have to think about how they're being subsidized by white families.
Damn.
And then that's something to think about. Like when we have a PTA, we're raising like a few $1,000s a year. But when you have white families doing their PTA at a very affluent school, they're raising thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And a case in point is there was a neighborhood school in Brooklyn that raised like $3,000 the whole year with the PTA. The school around the block, who is predominantly white, they raised, I think it was like $53,000. And that was used for them to hire, like, I think another art teacher for their school. So like, we could never do anything like that because how we are economically deprived in our communities.
Yeah.
So something to think about, but I think that doesn't answer your question. That's just a response.
No. I appreciate that.
Not a response to what you were saying about what you experienced.
Hell yeah.
I think I got into education because I grew up as a little Black boy who saw that education wasn't a fit for me. I felt like I was always out of place. I didn't fit in. I felt like my teachers were all white. They did not. Well, I didn't feel that they were white. I knew that they were white, but I felt like they did not have the experience.
Yeah.
Right. They did not have the experience that was needed to kind of educate. I looked around and I realized that we didn't have a computer lab. We didn't have the things that I know that exist in other communities. So I got very involved as early as middle school and high school, getting involved in student government and really being a thorn in administration's butt and really like saying, but why can't we have this and why can't we have that? And let's raise money for this. And this teacher is incompetent. And I think once I learned that word incompetent in middle school, I used it throughout my high school career. You're incompetent, just throwing them away like Oprah, just like throwing away these incompetency awards. Because
it's the truth though.
It's like you have it's a factory of new teachers that keep coming in and out and they get burnt out. And this goes back to what I was kind of saying with Abbott Elementary with Janine, like she is on the road to being burnt out because she's trying to do so much because she cares so much. And she's going to realize that if she continues to go down this road, that she will burn out and then she will leave the profession, which means that it'll be worse for the kids.
Yeah.
Because we actually are losing a really good Black teacher to another industry, most likely another industry, or they go into leadership, which we see with Principal Ava, who represents the ongoing windmill carousel of administrators that are coming into the school, right? And like not knowing what they're doing. I know a lot of people were mad at that because there are a lot of Black principals that are phenomenal, and for them to decide on a principal that is incompetent did get a lot of people upset. I know that I was at first kind of like, oh, okay. They're like, you're not showcasing. I think a lot of people wanted to see more Black excellence and see like, no matter what, that this principal is really trying to work for the school. But Principal Ava is like ordering online and like, she's like using the kids as props to like get the things that she needs. So it's quite interesting. So I understand that backlash in terms of like Black educators being upset that a Black woman who wrote and created the show created a character that is a Black woman leading the school in this very chaotic way for the sake of comedy. So I understand that why people were very upset with that. But I think, again, I'm going back and forth with your question, but I think that once I started realizing that and pushing myself forward, there's just no way out now. I think that I did leave education for a little bit in my early 20s, and I came back because I said that this is my love, this is my passion, and I'm not perfect, but I know that I make connections, and I know that I keep learning from the community that I work in, that I serve. Yeah. And I think that that's the most important thing, is that you keep learning about yourself and you keep learning from your community, and you're not there to save anybody, because those communities already have a lot of resources, whether you see it or not. Yeah. And we need to pull in those resources and use them to help us educate these kids.
What would you say? I appreciate that. I really do. And you know, trust me, don't worry about the tangents. I go on tangents all the time, but I feel that, it's such a beautiful thing to meet people who really do have a passion about teaching, because I think it's something that I think it's just something that has truly been one of the most like underappreciated just occupations that anybody could ever do. It's a whole lot taken for granted in terms of like, you're spending so much time in these particular institutions, and yet they're still being basically spaces and places for people to just go to and spend time and not really be enriched in the ways that they can be. But I love when we get those constant reminders that there are schools that are doing the things, that are people that they are still, you know, inspiring, and even not even just the success stories, but just the fact of the attempt, you know, because it's not on solely a school to save children and to like make children and students of all ages into all that they can be. And I think that that's at least since I was younger, that was always something I understood out the gate, that I can't sit here and blame the school for anything that I'm, you know, kind of going through personally, from that standpoint of like, this has more to do with what's happening at home more than it is what's happening here. And I could always see and tell the difference of when people were having trouble at school and also having trouble at home, you know, or people finding a way to allow just the different gradients that came with that. Like, it was students that I knew where they excelled at school because home was so terrible. So they really wanted to, that was their motivating factor. Like, I got too many brothers and sisters, or my mom is, you know, going through some things. My dad is going through some things. My family's in a particular place. So I'm literally working hard as fuck so I can graduate and start to get to a better space and place. Then also the vice versa, where it's like, I mean, nobody in my house cares, so I'm not going to care. And so, and you can't, if you literally are only trying to teach, you know what I'm saying, just teach the kids, just teach them about whatever the topic and the subject is so they can grow in understanding in whatever it is. I can understand you being like, damn, you know, feeling away when you find out things about these children that might happen to them. But also, I understand just the compartmentalizing what it is your role and your power in it is. How did you, because you do have a passion, how did you balance out how much effort and initiative that you kind of decided to show within the work of education? Because I can imagine not having any information about a particular students and just knowing them on the relationship status of y'all being teacher to student, and then learning something and might feeling like, damn, like I don't want them to. I didn't know that they, this was going on with them. That's why they, not doing so well in my school or whatever. How do you reckon with that? How do you know how to balance those things out?
I mean, I think the first thing is to see everything as building a relationship and seeing these students as family members. And what do you do for family members that you actually care about? I know there's a lot of family that we don't, so some family members that we don't care about.
True.
Unfortunately, but like the family members that you actually care about, like you have people leaving you responsible for these children. I agree with you that schools are not the be all end all to solving the problems that are outside of the school. And I think that's the problem that we have in education, is that people really think that education and education buildings are the places where people can overcome all the obstacles and fix all of the issues such as poverty. Like, to fix a lot of the problems that we have to actually address poverty first. It's not fixing schools, it's addressing poverty. And really making sure that everybody's coming to school well fed, and they have a shelter, and they have those basic needs taken care of, so that they can perform in school. But what we have is that a lot of students' basic needs, as we see, are not being met. So you have kids coming in, like you said, that might not be doing well in school, but have a not so good household, might be a little difficult to live in or challenging or anything like that. I never really want to focus on how negative families could be, because I think that it goes beyond that. I don't like saying, oh, it's the family's fault, it's the mother's fault, or the parents not raising their kids correctly. I don't believe that at all. I think that the parents are doing what they're able to do.
And what they know, probably know.
And what they know. So like, how can we, with all our degrees, looking like some of the people that we are working with, put our finger at them and say, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. I think that we have to come away from that deficit mindset of how we see Black families and brown families, and really think about how can we really motivate, elevate, inspire, influence, collaborate with these families, so that they feel like they're part of the school, that this is part of a family. And I think the easiest thing that people will say, which is very difficult, is building relationships beyond teaching, right? You have to care about how someone's doing before you teach them algebra.
Damn.
Right?
I agree.
If you don't care about me, why should I care about your arithmetic on the board?
Fuck it.
I don't care about that.
Yeah.
Right?
You solve for X. You. That's very true. That's very true. And you know what? I think that makes me really recollect back to the type of student that I was. And I remember specifically getting in trouble in a geometry class by my teacher was named Mr. Nye. And Christopher Nye. I remember that. And and he
on notice.
And he already was very snooty, had very much an attitude already. Just his demeanor was very much giving that, like, very little patience, little tolerance for kind of just anything. And it wasn't even like it was me doing the things. I wasn't even like a kid who acted up. I actually understood geometry fairly fucking well and actually excelled in that class. We had homework, came in, and I feel like maybe I was like talking to somebody next to me or whatever with the homework, and he was doing one of the problems from the homework on the board, and he was just doing, I could tell he was just doing it air math. He was just writing it out and just solving it right there, right? And just asking us to progress the overall equation. And I told him that he was wrong. And he got so upset with me. And he got in his feelings, and I'm like, I do this the way that you taught us to do this. He was like, all right, come up here and show me. And he got emotional. I was like, all right, cool. Brought my notebook, wrote it out myself, solved it myself, wrote it all the way out, and got to the answer. And it was 2 different answers. And he was like, okay. And he went, flipped to the back of the book, looked at that answer, and got quiet. And just was like,
I remember those days when the answers are in the back of the book.
right. And I'm he not, because it was like you trying to embarrass me. Now I'm like, so Mr. Nye, what is the answer? And he was just like, okay, Rodney, that good job. Go ahead, sit down. You know, everybody makes mistakes. Go ahead, sit down. I was like, oh, so I was right. Now you know, because I'm like, you're not about to do me like this, and got in trouble, got sent out of class, all that. When I'm like, I was right though. Like, you can't be mad at me for literally doing this in the thing, but I think it says so much about just how that is a relationship, like how you can peak and understand the personality types, and we see each other so much. So it's like, yeah, I might not know you personally, but I'm around you so much, I do got a sense of the type of person that you are, you know? So I think I knew exactly how to push his buttons, because it's like, but also like, why be like this? Like, why be so snooty about this instead of like making this a moment of like, see, this is why you got to show your work, y'all. Just look, good job. Like, look, we all make mistakes, and that would be it. Instead of it literally being, I immediately recognize you're trying to embarrass me. Like, you're trying to get me up to the front of the class, and for me to think that I think I know what I'm doing and I'm wrong, for me to demonstrate that, and for them to feel shame. And that's how I should learn geometry. You know what I'm saying? Like, that feels fucked up. But I was proud. I was so proud. It was one of my proudest moments as a 10th grader.
I could tell.
Yeah. I ain't gonna never forget that. Yeah. And I think he went and got like another degree or something like that. So I guess shout out to you. I hope you're doing well in all your things, Mr. Nye. It's no hard feelings, but I remember that shit. You currently work at a school that is for just for boys only, right? Yes. What's the name of the school? I don't know if you want to shout them out.
Yeah, it's Eagle Academy for Young Men, number 2 in Brooklyn. We have one in every borough. For those of you who know, I think everybody knows New York City. Well, I don't want to say never. That sounds very snooty.
It is. It's very New York to say that. Everybody know New York City.
New York City has 5 boroughs, so we have 5. We have 5, and we have 1 in each borough, and then we have 1 in Newark. So these are areas where Columbia did a study years ago showing what were pipeline factories from school to prison, and they decided to put a school in each of those areas to combat those pipelines. So
that's cool.
Was placed in Brownsville because it was number 2 after South Bronx for a pipeline of school to prison, where like a lot of kids were getting arrested and eventually going into the prison system. So we were placed in these areas for that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that as that being the reason for that. I've actually like been a part of just different mentorship programs for a few students who attend urban prep here in Chicago, which I feel like everybody maybe nationwide kind of has at least heard of the school, because I feel like every year they go viral for, all the graduating, seniors of urban prep got accepted to college and shit like that.
No comment.
Oh, no, I know. Because I don't know. That's all I know. And I can only imagine the comments, after the button, the record button is off. But nevertheless, I love that that's, what you were brought to in your journey of just, of educating. What would you say is, what have you noticed to be the impact of you actually being, I'm assuming that you identify as a man, teaching other male identifying young children?
Right. I think what's great about my school is that there are so many different type of young and older men that work with the school. We are like 80-something% men. And like 90%, I think, men of color. So you have so many different men. So the young men see.
Was that intentional?
No, it wasn't intentional at all. I mean, well, yes and no. I think my principal, who was phenomenal. No shout out to him because he likes to be under the radar.
Oh, okay.
he definitely finessed a good cohort of teachers. A lot of us don't leave. We stay for a very long time. So the kids see consistency. And there's all different types of men. Like you got your jockey men, you got your frat men, you got your musical men. You have all different types of men you can think of. Every man that exists, we got it for you. So it's great because the young men can see that. They can say, oh, we got Mr. Payton, who's like a hippie, right? So like they see that in me, and that is my archetype at the school. Like I'm laid back, I'm chill, I'm always like going against the grain. They know that I'm a feminist, so that's archetype. So I think that me just being there is just part of the family. It's like, oh well, I'm another person here to show you that you can be this way and it be fine.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of kids want to see. They want to see representation. They just don't want to see one type of black man in the school.
Yeah.
Because then those other kids will feel left out. Imagine if we had all the teachers that only were interested in football and basketball. Then we have a big chunk of kids who don't feel like they're a part of the community. How's that going to be for the school? So that's why we have so many different types of teachers that represent so many different areas in life and personality wise that actually really makes it a good fit for the young men. So I think that I'm part of a cohort of phenomenal men who are really busting their butt to give the best education possible. So I think it's good for me. I think it's good for the students. I learned a lot about myself just being around so many different men. I've never had so many different colleagues that I could call friends like I do at this school. So it's a really interesting place. I love it.
I love that. And that I think it honestly is the most palatable version of like an all boys school that I think I've ever heard of. Cause I think for me growing up, I think I definitely was like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't know about this, but I also think it had a lot to do with my upbringing being so femme forward. Like my mom, it was literally just my mom and my sister. So like not being in proximity to women really didn't make sense to me. Cause I think that was the origins of my socialization. Like I'm always either friends or we're always just cohabitating. And I was never one of those people who I think I was early, you know, I see women as my equals and friends very early on before I even had the language to see it, to say that. But I think it had a lot to do with that overall upbringing. I had to play with my sister. I had to, you know, and my sister was older too. So I had to play with her. So I didn't have this idea of like, oh, just boys and ball and, you know, and I don't want to, and cooties and shit. You know, it was very much like, no, I was like, what y'all doing? Let's play. Let's run. Y'all want to race too? Y'all want to come do this, you know? And it's interesting to see that type of thing going. So I applaud the fact that y'all have all that going on. It's a beautiful thing.
It's a lot. And the thing that a lot of things that we try to avoid is toxic masculinity. So
yeah, I can imagine.
We definitely try to bring in more of a feminist approach to our curricula. We definitely try to support our women teachers at our school as much as we can. I think that it's not perfect. And if I told you that we are a perfect school and that there is not a lot of toxic shit that's happening, I would be lying to you. But I think that we are getting to a better place every day, and we're trying to do it as best as we can. Yeah. And I'm a huge proponent for single sex education. It really stems from parents having the choice and the right to give to their children the type of education that they want. And it's not always co-ed education. So families should have the right to have access to free public education that is single sex education. It shouldn't just be available for private students, for private schools and things like that. So that is where my reasoning comes from, and why I think we should exist, is because parents and families should have the right to put their kids in single sex education if they want to. Yeah. And it doesn't work for everybody.
I get that. I get that. Is there a particular benefit, I guess, from research or anything like that lends to the advantage of a single sex
I mean,
institution?
there is a lot of research out there, and a lot of it has been disproven. I think that a lot of people see I'd get in trouble for this because
that's funny. Because I was thinking I was giving you an alley oop. Like, actually, he was like, "There's Pew Research says that when young men under the age of da 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 actually do get
No, what happens is that a lot of what happens to single sex education is that it becomes character education. So like, how do we build character, and how do we build men and women and single sex for women, and how we build men and women, right? How do we build them to be functioning in society? But the curricula and academics, there's studies that show that boys will not perform, that studies show that boys will sometimes not perform better in a single sex education or in a co-ed situation. So it really just depends on the key ingredient, which is building a community.
Yeah.
A community could be a co-ed education. It could be single sex education. It could be either of those things. I think that community and love and all of those things that are important to building humans into respectable, not Trump people is important. So if you asked me that question 4 years ago, I would have given you all of the research positively of how this is the right move. I think it has to do more with what you think is right for you and your family. And, you know, if you had a son and you wanted him to come to our school, it would be your choice. It would have to be something that you think he could benefit from. And I think that we do a good job with showing men how to be gentlemen. If that's something that you're interested in, then by all means, throw them in our school. They'll be fine.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. I mean, I have because I went to Clark Atlanta University, so the neighbors of my institution historically has always been Morehouse College. And I think it's always been this internal institutional beef between the men of Clark Atlanta and the men of Morehouse. Even though it's I'm not sure what made it start other than just the animosity of, machismo, just machizo, just type of energy of like, I'm the man type of thing. But I feel like my particular opinion has been earned. Like, I think I don't like a lot of things about the concept of aspects that Morehouse is, and they've earned it for me, like in a personal way. So I can't speak to the overall reasons as to why so many people have this aversion to them in the concept of what the school's branding and historical context has been. But I do think that the thing that is positive that I think attracts a lot of people to that institution is the idea of that you have this just, notable alumni and this aspect of just, ingraining this feeling of just self-worth to a certain degree. I think that's something that's very, very clear that happens. I think that it's the indoctrination is the problem, though. It's still very much giving, big ass locker room, you know what I'm saying? And just contradictions everywhere. Like I remember going to that coming to the AUC, the Atlanta University Center for the Uninitiated, which is Spelman, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta University, and ITC, and also Morris Brown College. Coming into that, campus and campus community was one that was interesting for me because I remember right before I got there, it was something that came out about, essentially speaking to sexuality and the expression of sexuality on Morehouse's campus. Like, it literally was just this big thing that the president came out with saying, like, no dresses, no purses, all these various things, and it was just like, damn, okay. And then I got there and then I got to see certain things in person. And it just did not rub me the right way. Because it felt in my mind, like conceptually from a distance, these men could be coming in and really making like true shifts and change into the men that are entering into society, into the real world, because they are actually shifting minds, right? But instead, they're, if anything, kind of just basically telling a lot of these young men, like you get there and telling a lot of these young men that you have arrived because you chose Morehouse. That's it. You've done the best thing. You've made the best decision of your life. And I get that from a a marketing context, but not from its context in reality and application. Because that's the last thing you should tell somebody who's 18 feeling like they're coming to figure out things and coming to learn things that you already did it. You good. You just finished now, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the problem with a lot of like schools that are single sex education is that they have an idea of who with the brand of what they're trying to market. And I think that's the problem. Like, I think I shared you this story where we had our first trans student, and you know, he came in identifying as a he and he left identifying as a she. And you know, this student, we allowed, and I hate using the word allowed, but we provided support for this particular student that wanted to wear a blonde wig, of all types of wigs, a blonde wig. And it was bright as hell. And guess what? We accepted it. And we had to educate our community. And
I can only imagine.
We realized that Eagle Academy is all different types of young men. It's not just the type of man that wears the blazer, who is straight, who does all of the things that we want that person to do. Eagle Academy is a man that has all of these other principles. It has nothing to do how they identify and what they wear and things like that. And I've heard those things at Morehouse where it's actually very deadly for young people, because you're basically telling them that if you don't do these things, you're not a man. And then that breeds more toxicity than what you want the young men to ever have. But you don't realize you're doing that. So, you know, they want the students to walk the paths that have been paved before them, right? Don't walk on the grass, right? You got to walk the paths that have been paved before you. But maybe those paths are shitty. And maybe those paths are not the way to go. Like, who am I in good faith to tell you that you can't wear a wig or you can't dye your hair? Or, you know what, if you want to if you want to have a Gucci purse, by all means, like, so what? Who cares? Like, it's not the end of the world. I promise you. It's not the end of the Black family. It's not. Okay.
It really isn't. And I think that's where it all went hand in hand to me and me forming my own opinion. Because I think the reason I even discovered anything about the AUC was because of Morehouse. I had an aunt that was like, you could be a Morehouse man. You should go to Morehouse for college. And my sweet godmother, Camille, we call her Cookie, who is my real connection to Chicago overall. She asked me, because she was taking my cousin Trail. We just call each other cousins. She was taking my cousin Trail to this tour and asked me, we were the same age, him and my other cousin CJ, and was just like, hey, you want to come to this tour? We're about to tour Clark Atlanta University. And I'm like, sure, Morehouse is down there. Maybe I could see that too. I wasn't even thinking about the institution I ended up choosing. And as soon as I got to CAU, it was over. They love at first sight. You know what I'm saying? And once I got there, I didn't know anything about the beefs and the energy or the animosity between the men of the alumni and men of this school and men of that school. And then I got there and was just like, because I was so involved, I think that's what gave me the insight and the full perspective on certain things. And it really disgusted the hell out of me, because it was just like, y'all have the opportunity to really, everybody's expecting y'all, like they already giving y'all the grace to believe that because you chose this school, oh, I know you're going to be great. You went to the same school as MLK. You went to the same school as, all these great men. And it's like going to Clark Atlanta University and then having context as to people who attended that college is like something that really, really has opened my eyes up to like how men have been showing up, because that institution indoctrinates so much pride into the institution and the branding of the institution that I was meeting so many men and so many of my classmates who happened to be female were telling me, oh, I literally met this guy from Morehouse. He approached me and said, hey, I go to Morehouse. My name is Rodney. Before even the name, they led with that, which to me was just like, it's giving, you could just replace that with anything, right. Like once they're now just a Morehouse man or a college student at Morehouse, like, I'm a lawyer for this such and such and such and such and Stanley, or I work for Morgan Stanley. I work for, Price Waterhouse Coopers and Berkshire Hathaway. Like, you could say all these things that are truly external factors of your status in various ways, either class and money and all these various things, or you could stand in who you are and the man that you became, the man that you chose to be. And it just disgusted the hell out of me. But enough about that.
Right.
I wanted to pivot and make the last few things that we talked about to be about what you are actually getting your I'm assuming it's your last degree. Your doctorate.
Wow.
But I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, or definitely tell me the full title if not. I believe it's in educational policy, right?
Yes, it's educational leadership and policy, and there is another degree that might be pending.
Oh, damn!
But I promised myself that I'm a life learner, so like this is just for me. This is never everything that I do everything that I do is for myself and my mom.
I love that.
And it's never to like show, oh, I did all these things, so I'm better than everybody.
Yeah,
this is all just about what makes me happy. So, the degree is in educational leadership and policy. It is it's been a very long road to get to where I'm at. It's challenging. I like want to pull my hair out. I want to cut my hair sometimes when I'm so stressed the hell out. That's probably why I cut my hair.
Maybe, you need to let something off. You need to let some dead weight. Like, look, I need to get something loose. Something need to get gone.
It's up to loose. Something got to get gone. It can't be me, so I got to be this hair.
Purge. You got to purge your plants. You got to purge your locks sometimes.
Right. I'm not getting rid of my plants, so it had to be the lock. So, I'm studying how school principals make sense of discipline in their schools. So basically, the thing that has been impacting a lot of Black and brown boys, I'm studying that, and that's in the nutshell of itself. I mean, it is pretty tedious, but I'm still working out the kinks right now. I'm meeting with a bunch of folks and really trying to solidify as much as possible. I did take some time off last year, so I would, as some people would say, I'm a little behind, but I think I'm on time. Yeah, okay. So I think that's the most important thing.
That's great.
My mom reminded me that the other day she said that comparison is a thief of joy.
Yes, it is in every way.
I'm like, yes, Mom. You always try to think of like where you're at and where you want to be, and it's never actually where you are at, and you're always like disappointed, like, damn, if I only had more of this or more of that. And we always want more, and not realizing that we are full of abundance already. We are our own kings and queens standing in ourselves and really being happy. I think that's important. And I think that's why I love your podcast, because I think it's real. I think that you want people to stand as who they are and not who, it's all real, which is why I said yes. I said, of course.
Hell yeah.
Because you help us with our podcast.
Hell yeah. I appreciate that.
But because of, I think it's an authentic way to get to know people. So I appreciate that.
Hell yeah. And I think, I'm glad that you feel the vision and understand that's exactly the mission of it all, is if I can ignite you to understand how powerful your story is and your perspective is, and I've done my job, because I already qualified myself. It was 2020 as a neo-griot of sorts, where I'm just storytelling, where I'm capturing stories, where I'm pushing people to tell their stories, or making sure that you know that your story is important. So I really do appreciate that you are exchanging in this way with us, with me and everyone else who's listening. But my first question, really my only question, is I feel like we all, especially talking about Black and brown people, and honestly all POCs who give a damn and who are affected, which we all are in most cases, policy, legislation, laws, statutes, bills, so on and so forth, never really felt like they were truly in our favor. And in our favor in a standpoint of like, it always feels like when we get something, we had to really go through so much. I believe it was just I don't want to say yesterday. It may have been yesterday or the day before yesterday. I think it was yesterday, or I can't remember, but it was a bill passed, basically finally categorizing lynching as a hate crime in 2022, which is crazy as hell to think about, though, that we still have laws on the books or particular things that are no laws on the books to protect particular things and to create precedents to protect specific things. Policy has never really been our friend, it feels like. And this is something that you've dedicated yourself to understand and be a difference in. But I really want to know, like, how effective is policy really? Like, because I think maybe we don't have the full scope on how policy maybe has affected us and changed us in a positive way. Because I think so often we're talking about, taxes going up and this becoming a rule that affects us more than everyone else. It's never like there's a policy or a bill or something that comes out where we can all cheer about. Honestly, if it wasn't for the legalization of weed, I don't even remember the last time I got excited about a new law of the land that now is allowed type of thing. Like,
in some states.
You know what I'm saying? Like, in some states. But nevertheless, it's like, that's been the only thing I've been associated with, where it's like I'm pushing for something to go through legislation. Everything else, it feels like I would like for it to be, but it feels too ambitious almost. You know what I'm saying? To think about reparations, to think about bills to assist in just educational finance, or just actually being really truly beneficial in helping people out of their particular situations, but in a very handheld manual type of way, not just kind of just solely giving particular assistance and hoping that is going to get you out your situation. We know that there's another element to that, How effective is policy?
Policy is really not that effective, to be honest with you. And we can always say, like, we need to get more of us in leading the way. But how many black cities are run by black mayors?
I don't want to. I'm in Chicago, so we got the notorious Lori of the lightest of feet. You know what I'm saying?
The lightest of feet.
The lightest of feet.
And all of her policies most of her policies do not favor y'all the least. At all.
We knew she was a cop coming in. Yeah.
Policy is really not that effective. And I think that once people realize that policy is not really effective, and it's as effective as people pushing to get what they need from that policy.
Gotcha.
And policy is not effective if it's not enacted correctly. Fully. Right? You can have policies, but if they're not being enacted, you don't have funding to enact those policies. What good is an anti-lynching law if you don't have people to go to make sure and monitor that people are not being lynched?
Dead ass.
I can say I think lynching is illegal, and lynching is illegal now in this state, right? But then I don't put no money at all to enforce it. There's no purpose. There's no point.
Yeah.
People are still gonna do it, and there's nobody. If they get caught, they get caught. But like, it's not. It doesn't become a big deal because the enactment and enforcement is not there. The funding is not there for that. It costs too much money to enact certain policies, especially the ones that are the most effective to people of color. So it's really about microdosing and figuring out, well, what are the smaller policies that we can do to build up to the big ones? Because we know that it's easier to focus on micro policies than macro policies.
Yeah.
And that's where we fall into a lot of traps, because we look to the federal government for their macro policies, but that's not always going to be successful because they don't have the resources and they don't have the cooperation from states as they should, unless they pay them.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
For them to do that. Like, think about No Child Left Behind. That's around the time that you were in school, right?
Yeah.
The federal government had to pay states to enforce No Child Left Behind. If you participate in this policy, we're going to give you the money that we know that you need for your school. So they participated poorly, but they participated.
I mean, I think they just, it was opposite day for several years. You know what I'm saying? We about to leave the most behind this motherfucker now. It's crazy.
Right. It's the opposite. Like, and it impacted students of color the most because the schools that were performing, unfortunately, are predominantly white. So they just kept performing. And then what we had was the policies that were micromanaging and really being harsh on these communities, closing schools, restarting schools, firing teachers, hiring new teachers, shifting teaching to the test. All of those things were harmful to kids.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder how we both came out of that and be okay.
Yeah, that's real. And you know, I appreciate you giving that particular perspective, because it seems like to me there is there's particular steps in the process, because we live in a very bureaucratic, nation that creates these steps on steps on steps on steps. But also there are so many varying factors to make some of these things happen. You have to have so much buy-in from not only community, but the people who will be the practitioners to make all this shit happen, to make this official thing, to then inform everyone on what this policy is, so they then can enforce whatever the policy is, which all those things, yes, take money. So it's almost like a question of, to be an informed person who backs a particular policy, if you are like just a community, just a citizen, you damn near got to be like, all right, we need to know all the Carfax on this motherfucker. Do y'all actually got the money to enforce this thing? Because I can imagine the vanity that you would receive and celebrate if they pass a policy that people have been waiting on for so long. Like, I know for a fact, in probably most cities, if they say that they are passing a policy that if you report a pothole, we're going to close that thing in however many days. We're going to give you that is the new policy. That is the new thing. It's on you. Clean up your streets. Make your streets less bumpy. And then for some reason, people already are don't have enough information, don't know the things, maybe they haven't implemented the thing, and potholes are still a fucking problem. And it's like, well, we told y'all, you got to tell us. So you ain't telling us, then is it really on us now? But it kind of put it on y'all, but I can imagine a world where it's like you're living your life, and it's really the people who probably have the most time and the most consideration to do those things. If they haven't made it as simple and as easy as possible, because we're talking about making it simple and easy, which I don't think America does often. We think about our voting process. I can imagine a policy like that would be some shit like, you have to call your this and that, you got to take a picture, you got to stop, you got to do so many steps. When probably the easiest thing would be like, I don't know, send a text message and tell you what street and what corner and whatever this is, to let you know, hey, this pothole is on the corner of such and such and da-da-da. Get that motherfucker, please. But I feel like, you were speaking to, you spoke earlier to just speaking when it came to like how at risk it's really more so just the system doing something wrong. It's the system not actually distributing resources and allocating funds in the proper ways. And I think the biggest buzzword that came out of 2020 that people started to really learn and understand, and honestly, it started to delineate a lot of what people were asking for in terms of progression of just racial issues and just racial progression, was equity. I feel like I remember diversity and inclusion being a part of, particular organizations, diversity being probably the most popular of those buzzwords, in terms of entertainment in various ways. But equity is a whole nother beast. Equity is one where we're talking about the money. Equity is one where we're talking about the resources and the access to certain things. Equity is ownership, and that's when we're talking about motherfuckers who can make and pick and choose decisions of what's happening and what's not happening. And so I really wanted to, end us on equity, because I think equity is something that you cannot talk enough about. And I really want people to understand the true inequities that we see right now in terms of the educational system. Like you reside and work in New York. I reside and work in Chicago, Illinois. So we are certainly two examples of people who have very interesting school systems that are in front of us. Like Chicago, I think probably one of the most infamous in terms of just the CPS system and the teachers union, which is forever on strike. I don't even have a child or know somebody or even know children in school, and I ain't be knowing about this stuff. It's very apparent that there is a distinct like inequities that are happening. Tell me what you've noticed in your time as an educator, and also your time as a student as well, where you believe the inequities are the largest.
Right. Well, I think the first thing is that people don't understand what equity means. Yeah. People think that it's always about like people use the word equity and really mean equality.
Yes.
And I think that what we need to really focus on is equity is about giving everybody what they need to be successful. And that means that there's going to be people who are not going to get everything that the other person next to them is getting, right? It's not going to be if I have $1, right? You might get a quarter because that is what is equitable versus someone that might get 50 cents and the other person will get the other quarter. So it's like people don't like that. They don't like that they have to get less in order to move something forward, which is why we're always going to struggle with white people, which is why in general, the reason why a lot of schools are not being successful is because of white families. White families are putting their feet to the ground and they're not wanting that. They don't want radical change. They're like, oh, well, I want my schools to be diverse, but I want X, Y, Z, which prevents that from happening. Let's raise the standards. Raising the standards means pushing more kids out.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that there's a good podcast called Nice White People. I don't know if you heard about it.
Hell no.
Oh, it's Nice White Parents, I think. And it talks about like these families, these white families that are going out of their way to be nice, but also at the same time, they're doing very harmful policies and practices that exclude more and more Black and brown kids out of that. So I think we got to get white families on the same page and have them understand that they're a big part of the fucking problem.
That makes sense.
And like how they think that they want to live in this enclave of like, I want everything to be perfect and I want my kids to be around diversity. But then I put all of those barriers away, right? You're not going to integrate your kid into their community, right? You're going to put your kid outside of the community. Equity, Black and brown people have to understand also in terms of equity that we also can be responsible for inequities as well. Because when we get money, we say we're not going to put our kids in those neighborhood schools. We're going to put them in private school. We're going to put them in these white schools because it's a better school.
Yeah.
We are also part of segregation as well. Mm-hmm. Because we think that because we made it and that we're middle class now, barely, that our kids are better off around other white kids. And that's not true. That sucks.
Yeah. And what does that do to them? What does that do to the kids?
Right, because the kids know that something's not. Kids are gonna know that something's off. They're like, I don't fit in. They know that they're Black. They know that this is not gonna be the same. And what message are you telling your kids that the only way they can get anything good is not to be Black?
Basically, or be so far away from it. I think that's
so far away from Black.
I always that's something that I noticed in being in Chicago for so long. Is like there's a lot of pride in Chicagoans and New Yorkers and just being from that place and growing up in that place and going through those school systems. So much pride that, in Chicago, as vast and as large as the city it is, if you tell a motherfucker you from Chicago, the next question is not even your name. It is, what school did you go to? And they're talking about high school. And they are using that information to inform them on who and the type of person that you are, where you grew up, the things you might know, so on and so forth. And what's always been interesting to me is that so many people can speak to the great fellow classmates they've had. It was like, look, I go to class with, folks who are doctors and this and that, and they're doing so well. They're NBA players. They're this, they're that. I went to school with such and such, and everybody knows such and such.
And guess what? And I always say, but what about you?
Now you see, you took it in a whole nother place.
What about you?
For me, the reason why I bring that up is because to me, I'm thinking about if y'all all went to these particular schools that are still that you could say that your school was a, quote unquote, needed particular things and still to this day still need things. I just never could understand, like, if you get to a point of affluence, if everybody it's not even about Black people feeling this like innate responsibility to give back and to take care of, the community in some way, shape, or form because you quote unquote made it out or got to a particular level of income status and affluence, I guess. In my mind, it's like if people just take care of their block, just the one that they were from, the things that they were connected to, and had an actual consideration to that, something that you are connected to. And I think that's what always disconnects me from certain celebrities and famous Black people with money, is because they're so quick to be like, why would I do that? If I go there, they're going to rob me. They're going to da-da-da. Why would I? And it's like, okay, all right, sure. But in my mind, it's like, imagine a world where you actually did whatever you needed to do to make sure that isn't a thing, though, And that feels like more positive effort, because more positive effort than anything. Like, I get the anecdotes that people give when they talk about, a young Dolph or a Nipsey Hussle and all these various things. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of those communities are better off because they were contributing to those communities.
Right.
Like, imagine if they basically made it and jumped ship. There wouldn't be a Marathon clothing store. There wouldn't be these various businesses and things that were actually able to get a little bit further ahead because of their involvement. These community things. Dolph, the week before, the only reason why he was even in Memphis, the weekend that he was shot and killed, was because he was handing out turkeys. Like, he was handing out food, doing a food drive around Thanksgiving or something like that, or around Thanksgiving or Christmas or something like that. So it's like so crazy to think like these people were trying to give back and do what they could for their community that they were connected to. Because in my mind, I'm like, that's all that's really needed. If every single quote unquote affluent Black person did that, imagine where else we would be. And then folks who had the particular clout and access to whatever it is that you have access to, use that to do whatever you do. You don't got to become damn Jesse Jackson. That ain't your thing. But if you know for a fact you are this person who has access into a new thing, like, all right, I work for Nike and I'm now an executive at Nike, but I have all these, I'm from a neighborhood where, a lot of kids like sports and also want all these different things. You could go there and give them all this kind of sports and entertainment education, just actually pour into those communities to try to improve those things instead of trying your best to tell you and everyone around you that are now new people that because you now got money, you new money, and your children that going to that place, being new, making your children be the news of the world, just admiring the hood from a distance, wanting to see what the fuck is like because they know you. Like, your children are with you all the time and can see that you aren't them. Like, you didn't have that same upbringing and that contributed to where you are. But you're telling them that what you had wasn't enough and what you had wasn't good enough and you just wanted the lucky ones. It's hell of a perception to give your kids if you distance them from that and not give them perspective. I'm not saying that I understand the context of like giving your children the best, but make it make sense. Like, because if all you're doing is sending them off to that white ass school and they ain't getting no other type of education or no other type of anything else, what the fuck is the point? What's the point for real,
To Abbott. You got to send them to Abbott Elementary. That's what you full circle. Send them back. Send them to Abbott Elementary.
Yeah.
They'd be fine. Like, kids, we need to give kids the benefit of the doubt. Like, they're going to be fine. And if you're affluent and educated, like anything that's missing, you're going to be there to support. Again, the school can't do everything that you're supposed to do. You still got to be a parent. You still got to do those things. And that's that. So, this has been a blessing. I've learned so much from you just sitting here. I'm like, I could talk to you for hours. I can't. But, this has definitely been a blessing to be here talking with you and really to kind of dig in and go at as well. I think that there's a conversation part 2 offline because I'm curious for some other things, but that'd be for another time.
I got you. And before I let you go, the last thing I'm going to ask you is my send it on portion of the pod. And my send it on portion is my call to action. So I have my last question is, how can someone better assist the community of educators?
Listen to educators and to what they need. I mean, just listen and with no ifs, ands, buts about it. Like don't question us. Just listen and provide as much as possible and love the hell out of us. Like, we're doing a lot of work here. Like, I think that's important. Listen to educators. That goes for everyone who's working in education. Listen to the people that are in the field doing the work.
I love it. I think that's a good, nice little bow on that. Please let everyone know, Madison, how they can support you, how they can just follow you, how they can do anything that you would like for the people to do with you connected to it all. Let them know.
Right. Well, the first thing that I want everybody to do is to invest in your local government. Local politics is extremely important. So get to know your representatives, because those are the things that you're going to feel the most. The second thing is you can reach me at Madison Payton 2 on Twitter. I'm pretty available there. And I also have a podcast that's Race Through Education.
Yeah.
And on Twitter, that is racethroughedu.1. And I'm there. I'm always available. So I'm always down to talk to anybody that wants to talk. So
it's lit. And you can see all those links in the description of this podcast if you are listening or if you are watching on YouTube. If you don't know, you should know. You can follow me everywhere at Kings_Memoirs. Make sure that you also follow the podcast at Simply King Pod on IG, and go and like the Facebook page at Simply King Podcast. Make sure that you also go and follow my business page at Life is King on IG. And if you need anything in the realm of digital marketing or creative production, go check me out and let us work and let me create for you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much, Madison. I think this is a hell of a conversation. It's definitely one that the both of us, I believe, could talk ad nauseum. But it's all good. It's all good, because that's what it's for. That's what it's made for. Conversation is never ending. You know what I'm saying? That's ellipse. It's more to come. But no, I thank you so much. Thank you so much. This has been the Soulfully Conscious Podcast for humans simply being humans. I've been Rodney Perry, also known as King. This has been the so eloquent Madison Payton, and this has been Simply Clean.